In this video, I'll be talking about deformers. Now, deformers basically edit and manipulate your mesh in very specific ways. So, for example, the latents tool have kind of like a fallout effect. The twist deformers may just add a bit of a twist to your object, squashing it down, creating sort of a wave effect. Now, to access the deformers, make sure you're in the modeling tab and you go to deform. And the main ones we're going to look at is the latents and the nonlinear tools. We'll start off with the latents tool. It's quite similar to the soft select. Basically, it'll create a latents box around your selected object, and if you have the attribute editor on, and you go to FFD1 latent shape, you can add in more subdivisions, like so. So just leave it there for a second. Now, if you hover over the wireframe of your latents box, hold on the right mouse button, you've got latents points. They're kind of like vertexes, and again, it is quite similar to the soft selection tool. Basically, it kind of creates a fallout effect. So rather than, say, for example, me going in, double selecting these edge loops, moving them around, you'll see that when I move this edge loop around, it only affects that one specific area. Whereas the latents tool can affect a wider range of areas. So you'll see here that it's not just affecting this edge here, but also the top part as well. So I can kind of move it in and out. Select more edge loops and move them across, scale them in if need be, and it's quite a good way to sort of deform your objects. You see I can just move it up and down like so. You'll see that it's quite similar to the soft selection tool. So if I select this here, increase it a little bit. Again, it's kind of the same effect, just kind of influencing a wider area rather than just the one specific edge loop that you selected. There you go. So we'll look at the main ones we're going to look at mainly is the non-linear ones. You'll see here you have various different options. So you have bend, flare, shine, squash, twist, wave, and the names themselves kind of gives it away. Waves kind of creates a wave effect for your object. Squashing it, again, squashes makes it kind of smaller or bigger. I'm not sure what shine does. We'll double check that in a second. Flare, so flare kind of expands the object a little bit, so you can kind of create like a peak at the top and make it wider at the bottom. And the bend tool can kind of create like a 90 or 45-degree angle. And this would be quite useful if you're doing, say, for example, pipes, or maybe you want to do like a bend around a corner. This is the tool you may want to use. So we'll start off with the bend tool. So you'll see if I go to X-ray, you'll see that it's create a line in the middle. That's basically your bend shape, sorry. So if you go to the attribute editor, go to bend 1, and you'll see that you have some attributes that you can mess around with. The low and high bound basically increases or decreases the height of this line here. So you see if I just go down, I can make it bigger or smaller if need be. This is quite useful because you may want to just influence a very specific part of your model. So maybe, for example, if I just want to do the top part here, I could move the curve down, actually move the object itself. So you'll see now that it won't influence the bend shape, won't influence the bottom half, it'll only influence the area that it's around, so it'll only influence this particular part here. So let's try giving it a curve. Now you might have noticed a problem here, that it's not really bending the way I want it to. Why? If we look at the wireframe, for instance, you'll see that there's no edge loops there. So without those edge loops or vertexes, there's nothing for it to morph across. So if I do the same thing here, add in a bend, we'll just change the height a little bit, move it up. So you see here, I get a much better bend. Why? Because I have those extra edge loops in there, those extra vertexes. And again, it's the whole idea of subdivisions. The more subdivisions you have, the more control, detail, morphing ability that you have. So you have to make sure you have enough subdivisions there in order to kind of create a nice bend. So have a quick look at flare. So again, it's the same thing. Most of the tools are very much the same. So you go to like the flare option, and again, you can change that the high and low bound. Again, you can kind of create like a little bit of a curve, so you can kind of see what this does here. You can give a bit of a flare, expanding it from the different axes. So this kind of makes it look like a sort of like a wave effect, if anything else. Yeah. Twist is quite useful, especially if it's for a tree as well. So again, it's most of these are very much the same. You have a high and low bound. You can start twisting it in different ways, and you can see that the model, let's turn off the X-ray for a second, is actually going to influence. It's actually twisting itself around a little bit. The twist tool is quite useful when it comes to stuff like trees, because again, trees kind of have like sort of twists and turns all over the place. You can kind of see that this is kind of a straight tree. If I show you this one, for example, next to it, you can see that there's a slight little twist to it. Again, it kind of makes it feel more natural because a lot of trees aren't just going straight up. There's always got some sort of little twists and turns in the branches. So you might want to add that to, say, stuff like trees, or to whatever object that might need a little bit of a twist to it. Go to wave. Again, kind of the same thing, kind of waves ups and down. You might not need to use it for any sort of specific tools, but it's there if you ever need it. And the last one we'll look at is squash. So again, it's very much the same thing. The factor, so you can kind of see that you can give it a little bit of a squash. It's quite good for sort of cartoony stuff. It does kind of feel like more like a cartoon thing, if anything else. Again, you kind of expand it, move it up and down. Maybe wondering where would you ever use this, and again, you've got the high and low bounds. You can kind of change the area of influence if need be. You could use it, for example, with a ball. So if a ball hits the ground, it might squash down slightly, and you can actually animate these as well. So this is something I quickly made. So I press play. You'll see here that I add that little bit of a squash to it. So you see it goes up, comes down, and a little bit of a squash to it. So you can actually animate these as well. So those are your main deform options. You may never use these, although I would say the main ones you may want to use when it comes to sort of more photorealistic stuff would be the bend and the twist options. Again, they're very good when it comes to stuff like, say, a nice 45-degree or 90-degree angle for, say, like a wall, maybe a tree. And again, the twist is really good for trees as well, just kind of make it feel a little bit more natural.